What else? What else? Oh, just a quick trigger warning. There might be some stuff that might trigger people. So yeah, I'm sorry for that. But yeah. Wait, what? All right, sorry. I'll start for real. I'll start in 3, 2, 1, go. In a world where experimental treatments exist and could save millions of lives but are being dangled in the faces of people with terminal diseases, we think that it is high time that we support the right to try, because when we support this, we support the right to live. So 3 things in my speech. Number 1, motion and keyword definition. Number 2, goal, burden, standard setup, and number 3, substantives. But first, on definitions. When we talk about the right to try, we are talking about the legal liberty of individuals to legally try experimental treatments without the restriction of the government body, right? We think that supporting this right to try means that we support the right to live, because we give these people the liberty and the agency to choose their own fate. Now, for our goal, it is to empower, protect, and enfranchise the terminally ill and the desperate people who are already on the ground, who are confined to their hospital beds. And our burden is to prove that the right to try actually achieves this goal. And 2 standards for you, panel. First, where do people get better chances of living a normal and happy life, especially these terminally ill patients? And second, where do we better empower people? And if we are able to prove that these 2 standards are better on our side of the house, then we take this debate. And for opposition, their burden is to prove that individuals shouldn't be given the agency to take these treatments that could potentially save their lives and millions of lives after that. And before I continue to my substantives, I would like to characterize a few things. First, on the people who are suffering from terminal diseases like cancer, HIV, AIDS, autoimmune diseases. What does this actually look like, right? They are suffering through hell every day, fighting for their survival. Their medical expenses are racking up because their treatment and their hospital bills are high. And they're unmotivated to live, but unfortunately, they have to force themselves to live because of their family, because of their friends, right? They don't even live for themselves anymore because they are in pain. They don't want to live. They're sad and depressed, and they have tried everything, chemotherapy, safety precautions, and other medicines, but they haven't worked because they are terminally ill and they are desperate to live life. And it is unfair when treatments exist, but these patients get it just because the FDA hasn't approved it. And what do these people actually want? What do the sick people actually want? They want to have a normal life. They want to have a better relationship with their families. They don't want to feel like a burden to their families. They want to give their families hope and they want to try their best for their families as well. And of course, they want to be healthy. And when we talk about experimental treatments, these are treatments that have undergone all of the procedures that need to be gone through, like computer simulations and animal testing. Obviously, we wouldn't be doing human testing we wouldn't be offering it to humans if they weren't sure to work, right? There has been a lot of research put into this, and they were created by medically trained professionals who have sick people's best interests at heart. These medical professionals are in favor of these sick people. They want to save them, right? Which leads me straight into my arguments. First, the right to try actually gives people the chance to live normal lives. Because in status quo, we see that sick people barely have any resources to do anything, right? Especially if they're in a grave condition, they aren't able to live their normal lives. For example, a cancer patient who can barely walk because he or she is so weak, or a person who has AIDS, who has compromised and cannot leave their house, or or a person suffering from an autoimmune disease where their bodies are literally being teared up, their skin is falling off their bones, and their joints are literally breaking apart into a million pieces, right? We think that they can't live normal lives and they have no other option. And that is why we think that medical procedures, experimental treatments are the solution to this, right? the solution to the biggest problem in today's debate, right? We think that you are dangling these experimental treatments in front of their faces, and you don't let them choose it, which is why they know that there's a chance to have a normal life, but it's right there in front of them, the experimental treatment, but you're not giving it to them. And before, opposition might say that, oh, there's no informed choice, they think they have a chance to live, but what if they don't know the side effects? But we think that in experimental treatments, there is so much informed choice. There are briefings, there are waivers, participants give their consent, they literally choose to do this, right? And we think that there's also so much research, so that point from opposition cannot be used. All right. Now, what actually happens when we give the people the chance to have these experimental treatments? They could get cured. We could save millions of lives. We could save people from past incurable diseases, and we give them the lives that they always want. And additionally, they have better relationships with their family because they don't feel like a burden anymore, because they don't have all these hospital bills, as well as they don't have depression anymore because they're not sick anymore. They can live their normal lives. And before I continue to my second point, any PYs? 3, 2,
PY?
1. Okay, go.
What's the analysis to assume that these treatments would be safe?
All right. As I said earlier, these have been tested on animals, computers. There have been so much research. If that's opposition's main point, that like, oh, what if it's not safe? What if it's not gonna work? We say that it is there is a high chance that it will work because it has been tested. But even if it doesn't work, even if there's a chance of failing, we think these people who are in grave conditions have nothing to lose anymore, because otherwise they would die a long, painful death, right? Instead of trying, instead of having another option that isn't possible in status quo anymore, like I said earlier, they will just die. You're gonna leave them to die. People are dying. I can't believe like this is something that the opposition will stand for, right? Now, second argument, we better empower people on our side because we give them the right to choose. We give them the right to choose with ample briefing. We at least there's informed choice as well, right? We are letting them take agency, and this empowers them. This gives them control of their own fate and destiny, which is exclusive on our side because we give them the option to opt into these medical treatments, compared to the opposition where they're literally held back, and if they know that there's going to be, for example, chemotherapy, right? On chemotherapy, when people with cancer go to chemotherapy, that's the only option that they have, which will rip them apart, which will literally give them radioactive effects and bad effects on their body. We think that these treatments, these experimental treatments are actually much better because they have another choice. They have a less painful choice, which is why on government side, we give people the better agency, we give them better lives, we give them better chances, and we support their right to live. And that is why we have never been prouder to propose. Thanks.
Awesome speech, Prime Minister. Now to present to us the opposition's case, please welcome Leader of Opposition, Jaya.
Hi, am I audible?
Loud and clear.
Okay, thank you. Give me a moment to set up my timer. Okay. I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, understand that the main thing that differentiates government and opposition is that government is pushing for these weak individuals, the most vulnerable individuals in society, to use these treatments that are not yet approved for clinical use. So even though they say that they've tested on animals, they've tested on using their whatever technology, at the end of the day, these things have not been approved for clinical use, meaning these companies have not sent these samples to the FDA to be approved for human use. At the end of the day, these things are still not safe for humans. So next, we tell you another thing about why waivers and legal documents, even though they are presented on the team government side, they still do not work. Understand that team government themselves have painted these individuals as desperate, as having no other alternative. So therefore, understand when these individuals are literally desperate for these things, they are less likely to want to read through these waivers, all these long ass documents that
Point of
companies
information.
are going to give them, because at the end of the day, they are already desperate. They don't care. They are willing to put their life on the line for these things. And this is crucial to today's debate in why these people are most vulnerable and why these people are most harmed.
Point of information.
Moving on to our motion decomp. We tell you these individuals that are getting tested on probably have to sign lots of consent forms, NDAs, non-disclosure agreements, and lots of other agreements. These agreements from the company are protecting these companies, these testing facilities, preventing legal repercussions. All of this is bad because of, firstly, the information asymmetry. These everyday individuals are most likely not those who are actively involved in med-interns. We don't know the full procedures. They don't know the full procedures that makes a medicine to be clinically approved. They don't know how to spot out what's safe and what's not. And they are likely to have a clouded judgment, just intending to do what's best for them out of short-term desperation. Secondly, nobody reads these contracts fully. These things are printed out purposely in small fonts and 15-page long, giving these people a facade that they're protected through lengthy documents that nobody reads. Henceforth, this means that consent isn't actually fully given because it's not being fully informed. And thirdly, people see short-term benefits because not the long-term harms. In the parallel, people eat fast food for the short-term benefit, not thinking about long-term repercussions. Same goes to why people smoke and indulge in alcohol, etc. We tell you these individuals now consent to potentially dying, facing repercussions, mutations, and so on, so forth. Here are the 3 stages
Point of information.
Developing treatments later. Firstly, it's discovery. Secondly, it's preclinical, which is like non-human testing, which has not passed and approved by the FDA for testing, and where these people cannot ensure that these drugs fulfill basic safety requirements. This is the second stage, is where team government is going to put these humans in, going to subject these humans to this type of harm. And lastly, the last stage, which is clinical, which is human testing, which is what our side wants. This implies that any form of the treatment that happens under side proposition is one that isn't completely approved or tested to be safe per the side procedures, meaning not tested to have basic safety requirements, even on animals who are obviously biologically different from humans, and also not tested on humans, not sure whether or not it will bring negative repercussions or not. The burden under our side is that Gov is justified.
Point of information.
The government is justified to intervene in individuals' choice if it brings a high likelihood to speculative harm. And secondly, this policy brings negative repercussions to society. The counterfactual under our side is that individuals are only allowed to opt into treatments that are clinically approved by the FDA, for example, being fully tested in labs and other specimens already. Next, moving on to our team's arguments. Firstly, I'm going to talk about the harms. Before that, some context. Proposition side is allowing people to opt into treatments still in the experimental stage or not yet approved for clinical use. The harms towards these individuals and society is, firstly, the government cannot ensure the safety of these individuals, whether or not mistakes will happen. This also impacts other people because things like deformities, mutations, etc. may happen, and most of the time will happen because they're already in this unbalanced, this unsure stage of testing. This is because these experiments often involve things like genetic engineering, directly messing with the laws of nature. When these things happen, it's very hard to actually regulate what is happening and whether or not these things will actually work. And then there's huge legal. What happens is now there's huge legal and autonomical and moral gray areas when things actually don't work out, when things actually when the conditions of these patients actually worsens, what are these companies going to do now? When these individuals suddenly have things like mutations, deformities, what are these companies going to do and how they deal with it? This is something
Point
Gov
of
has
information.
to overcome. Sure, I'll take that.
It is still not clear to me why for a terminally ill patient with a 100% death rate in the following few months, whose body is literally falling apart, how it could possibly get any worse, why it's likely that it could possibly get any worse through experimental treatments. Because I don't think it's very likely on your end.
Okay, sure. Even if they're going to die and fall apart either way, we don't think it's right to subject them to even more pain and even more of these things when you're not even sure if it's going to help them or work. We also don't think that these clinics can hold humans down for testing like they hold animals like captive, right? And moving on. Secondly, we tell you this policy bleeds out to other parts of society, incentivizes companies to do unethical testing on people because of how the policy and proposition makes it seem as though it's ethically justified to be done on humans. The context of this is that the goals of the companies and individuals are different. Firstly, companies want money, efficiency, and secondly, the individuals want to get well. When time and money are at stake, companies are racing to be the first in producing certain treatments. Unethical testing is something that will happen under government's paradigm because firstly, individuals are the weakest and most vulnerable, and they have no legal ammunition and power against these large testing companies that have legal teams. Secondly, signing these consent forms directly gives company the consent to do testing and regardless of the risks, right? So why are these companies have no incentive to review mishaps and their testing procedures to the government or the public? Because firstly, these are already not approved by the FDA. It's technically already unsafe to attract individuals to do testing. They're not going to paint a secondly, painting their testing and failures as is simply not attractive or optimum for them. And thirdly, since they already have legal protection in terms of human autonomy, they have no specific regulations for them. And fourthly, oncologists would recommend this treatment when they would have been hesitant to do so before. With that, I've never been prouder to oppose. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leader of Opposition. A few reminders before we continue. Debaters, try your best to wrap things up in the 7th minute. We will not be considering anything you say from after the 7th minute. Anyway, to continue to extend the case for government, please welcome Deputy Prime Minister here.
Hello, sorry. Could you give me a few seconds to organize my notes and my timer? Thank you. Okay, hi. Let me just start my timer as well. Hold on. Okay, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1, and panel, let me paint you a picture. A 28-year-old woman who has 2 children and the husband is battling stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She has limited time. She only has 4 months to live, and she has tried everything. She already is in debt because of the chemotherapy. The doctor gives her 2 choices: expensive chemotherapy or the option to undergo a clinical trial on the way to FDA approval or whatever approval it is that hasn't been tried on humans yet but has ample background clinical research. The doctor briefs her on what the trial may entail. He talks to her about what can happen. She then says yes and says, I'll do it. I have nothing to lose. I'll do it for my family. When the opposition opposes the right to try, they're removing the right of choice freedom and life of these individuals who are battling terminal diseases. They remove the right to choose of those who are battling excruciating chronic pain that they do not know the cause of, those who are in the last months of their lives, those who are trying to look for hope and are so bankrupt that they cannot get proper treatment anymore. This is their only solution. Only government will be the one to give you the solution. The solution is what we are proposing, giving them the right to try, giving them the right to try to live. I'm going to do 3 things in my speech. Number 1 is to rebut the issues that came out in opposition's case. Number 2 is offer my point of argumentation. And number 3, show you why government wins this debate. Simply, we at government say, support the right to try and give them the right to choose their destiny and give them hope. So while my partner talked about giving people the chance to live normal lives and how our side will empower more people, I will be talking about how time is of the essence, how that is what we should look at right now. So before I continue with my arguments, I will first signpost them as well. So I'll just be talking about the time, the essence of time in these scenarios. So now let me move on to my rebuttals. They said that, for example, these are not safe for human, but the PM has said and said again that I think the opposition completely doesn't know how these industries work. If they are then in the testing phase, then they would have undergone years of research. They are just on the way, but now we are cutting it shorter. We are testing it on them because they want it, because they're going to consent to it, because they have the hope of actually gaining treatment through that without the financial burden, because we believe that these in these scenarios, the companies will give it to them for free because these are trials and they already have ample background research. They don't just give out drugs that don't work and they know that it's not going to work. That is not in the best interest of businesses, and I will tell you why. They said that waivers also won't be read because they're desperate and they have clouded judgment because of they have been having the illness for short term. But on this point, these people have been dealing with chronic illnesses for years. They have been dealing with the excruciating pain and burden of having these diseases. Opposition, I urge you not to minimize what these people have been going through. Let's engage though. On briefings and waivers, usually these terminally ill patients will be given face-to-face briefings. They and their families are going to be told the harms. And we see this, for example, when we get treatments in the status quo. So I don't see how that was an argument in their case. They also said that it's not safe for humans, that I already disproved that. So again, they said that, for example, there are going to be regulation and gray areas. Even if they're going to, for example, moral gray areas, we believe that is unlikely to happen. And they said that it disincentivizes companies to commit unethical. I will take it at the 5 to 6 minute mark. Thank you. But not at all, because it is in the company's best interest that their drugs work to get financial gain. That is how they will get a financial gain in the first place. If their treatments work, they will want to follow guidelines so they can gain money, and so they can give more treatments. They can actually push it further to more people, gaining more money as well. So now, point on my argumentation. So now, before I say that though, our solution looks like stem cell therapy, trial drugs for AIDS, or vaccines. When these people don't have hope anymore, and these are the only ones that we can offer them, we believe give them the right to try. So now on my argumentation, these individuals' days are numbered. We need to give them their rights immediately, on the point of immediacy and urgency. Panel, we need to enfranchise these terminally ill patients. They have a 90 to 100% chance of death. And what opposition is going to do is remove that right to try completely and make them wait for years, the years that they do not have anymore. And now on this side, we are giving you the right to try, as soon as you want to, as soon as you can, and your choice to actually do what you want with your life, because they will be briefed time and time again, and it's like a process. They won't just be like, the doctors won't impose a treatment on them. They will have to choose, because that is in the ethical code of doctors, and we believe that doctors have their best interests at heart as well. So again, they have no other choice. They are desperate. They have the lifespan of months or a limited amount of years left. They have no more time. When you have no more time, are sick, you're facing excruciating illnesses, it would be brutal to restrict them from giving them the right to the right of choice and to the right to choose their own destiny, because again, they're already burdened financially, emotionally, physically. And what is opposition going to do? They're going to restrict that. They're going to make them wait for years for actual approval of the FDA, when these already clinical research trials have been already tried. They have already tried, but again, approval of the FDA shouldn't be the priority, essentially, and especially when these individuals individuals are already facing so much burden, and they're already consenting to this, because I feel like they say that clouded judgment. But let's not forget that, for example, some people, like most of the people, for example, who have stage 4 pancreatic cancer, or those who have HIV, are you going to say they're stupid? They are not stupid. They can think for themselves, and if they believe that they can get treatment, and if they want to opt into that trial, we say do not stop them. They tell us that it is unethical to put them at risk, but what is unethical, brutal is to remove their choice when they're already disenfranchised, when they're already battling these diseases. When you weigh the small risk of failure to a long painful death, and when you weigh the small risk of like, oh my gosh, it's not FDA approved, it might fail, panel, they have the chance to die in a few months. They have a 90 to 100% chance to die in a few months, and we are giving them the right to actually choose what they want to do with the remaining time in their lives. And that is what we believe in government. If they choose to do that, then that is what they should opt to do, and we should not restrict them anymore, because they have already been so disenfranchised. In opposition's world, they will have to succumb to financial demise, depression, and death. Again, these people are so already burdened physically, financially, emotionally, and their family are also burdened. So what are we going to do? We're going to alleviate that. We're going to give them a sense of hope, and we're going to give them a choice to do this. We're not going to impose anything, no, but we're going to give them the right to actually choose their own destiny. So now in this debate, only government was able to provide actually the solution for these people, the actual motivations and what they actually want to achieve. And to summarize my points, I've proven to you that time is of the essence, and only we can give that. And for all those reasons and more, I'm very, very proud to propose. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister. Now to extend the case for opposition, please welcome Deputy Leader of Opposition, Jaya.
Just give me a few seconds. Let us clarify something that wasn't engaged with on DPM's speech, right? We want to say that the general public can also test in this debate, because understand that when you make something a right, then everyone can opt into that right. Anyone can test because it is a right? So first of all, just a few rebuttals. First of all, they told us that the right to live and the agency to choose your own fate, things like this. But first of all, we already told you that this choice is never informed and fully chosen by them in the first place. We told you that they are terminally ill and is not in the rate and it's not in the rational state of mind. They have a clouded judgment because of their desperation, and we think that this also applies to their family members around them too. Thus, it is in the best interest of everyone that this is a justified intervention of the state, right? And second of all, we think that most average people do not read through the whole consent form, especially when doctors paint the treatment in such a good light in hopes that the patient will opt into the treatment because of the incentives that each companies have that Caroline have already told you about. And third of all, we think that we've already told you that companies pressure these patients and recommend it when they wouldn't have done so. And they told us in the response to this that they are not stupid, they can think of themselves like pancreatic patients, things like that. But we tell you that we never said that these people are stupid. We think that every human being's natural state when facing emotional stress is and like every other baggage that you have characterized in your speech, financial burden, things like this, would not be in the right state of mind to choose anything. They are not stupid. It is just like a natural state that every human being will have to go through, and it is not removing their right to choose, right? And we don't think there is also choosing your own fate and choosing your own destiny, because you never know what the treatment is going to lead to. We never know that how much likelihood it is going to fail, things like this. And then they told us, and they characterized how like it's fighting through hell, and you have like very high medical bills. And yes, we are like aware of this, and that's going to be worse when you take the treatment that will worsen your condition, because there is a likelihood that this is going to happen. If it works, then good for you, but the possibility that it doesn't work exists, and it's not a trade-off that we're willing to make. There's side opposition, right? And third of all, they told us the incentive of a company to follow the guideline because they have like financial incentives, things like this. But first of all, we tell you that no, they do not have this incentive because they know that if someone is terminally ill and chronically ill, they are desperate and do not care about the percentages of death shown to them, and it is likely that these percentages will be pleasing since the company wants people to opt in and try and they will try to sugarcoat it to the patient, right? And so I'm going to go through a few arguments in my speech. First of all, how the government is justified to intervene into these individuals' choice. Second of all, false hope and why that is so bad to people. And third of all, it leads to a slippery slope that removes the power and the authority of the FDA and professionals in medicine, right? So on the first argument of how the government is justified to intervene into these individuals' choices, why is it justified that the government is just to intervene into these choices? We think that first of all, social contract allows the state to overrule an individual agency to prevent worse harm from happening and worse outcomes, because it is at the moment when they know no choice of yours.
Point of information.
No, thank you. That they are allowed to step in, because this social contract goes both ways. For what the state has done for you, giving you like laws and education, healthcare. In exchange, you give them the right to choose what's best for you when in these kind of moments, right? And we calculate the degree of like intention and harm, right? Because even if the outcome leads to bad stuff, and like for example, you not being able to like having like better life, then it is the intention is still good because it is still to protect you, and the obligation for the state to protect its people, it's done with the intent to protect you and out of necessity, but it also does not like give you massive harm, because that is also
Point of information.
You never know what could have happened, and it's not safe to take that risk, where the comparative would be a lot worse, right? Because you're taking such a massive risk to your own health. So the parallels of policy and status quo also exist. For example, like the pandemic lockdown restricting your like mask mandates for the good of the people, and like for example, like seat belts mandated by the government taking away your right to movement because you might die in a car crash if you do not put it on. And we think that that is like very logical, right? On the second argument of false hope for people, why is it likely that on your side you give them false hope? Because you are dangling the options that are not going to be confirmed to work. When there is the slightest likelihood that it's not going to work, it should not be provided to the public, because it will harm a few individuals, even if it's just like a small percentage of individuals. Because understand that the government has an obligation and duty to provide for the safety of all its citizens and not leave behind a few disenfranchised ones. We think that that small likelihood still matters, right? So why is false hope so bad? And this is the impact, right? When someone is terminally ill and sick with very little hope already, it is simply cruel and unethical for you to give them some hope and then rob them off of it again when it does not work, or in the worst case scenario, you worsen their condition. That is even worse, right? And the comparative on our side is that we only provide options that are confirmed to work, or at least has very likelihood of not working, which does not give patients false hope at all, right? And then on the third argument, on how it leads to a slippery slope that removes the power and authority of the FDA and the professionals in medicine. But before that, I'll take a few more.
Keep on talking about the possible risk of like the government intervening to protect these citizens, but what do you have to say for the individuals who really are going to die anyway without these experimental treatments, and they're probably going to live excruciating pain that cannot possibly get any worse?
Well, we've already told you that, we've already told you that it is going to be worse, and there is still going to be like a worser stage of like of your health. And yeah, I'll just I hope the rest of my speech clarifies that. Okay, so the third argument on how it leads to a slippery slope that removes the power and the authority of the FDA. We think that the context of this is that the FDA and medical professionals are the only trusted actors to test these medical equipment or treatments, because the moment in which you disregard the authority of the FDA and take away their ability to test, you give society the facade, and their whole purpose should be disregarded in Pop's paradigm, right? Because understand that they are the professionals who know best, and it's very dangerous when people pressure them to allow experimental treatments as an act of compassion, and they feel coerced, right? They have like a better understanding of it than average citizens, and that there's a reason why they took like years of training just to get that degree, just to be undermined by like average people who do not know better. This is why we do not allow citizens to like choose for the medical decisions of the country, and instead is done by professionals that have done training to do so, right? There's a reason why FDA approvals actually exist, so that to make sure that something is 100% safe and can work, so that that it does not endanger anyone. Caroline already told you on why, on the comparative, the choice of average individuals are not fully informed, right? And also the process of like experimenting the treatment will take a longer time if you keep allowing patients to try it out, because the products and resources are very limited, and you need to and these products need to be used for actual research of it, right? What is the impact of this? First of all, you're less likely for the incentive of these professionals to further medical research or to develop drugs, because their whole role as an actor is diminished in proposition. You just give them the most basic formula that touches the surface level of diseases and no further testing. And second of all, in the future, it's more normalized to break the barrier again of FDA approvals, and that's very dangerous. If one person does it because they claim they have a unique case, everyone will start to do it too. Also, if you make something right, everyone can do it, no matter if they're terminally ill or not. Never been touted true, of course.
Thank you. Awesome speech, Deputy Leader of Opposition. Now to crystallize the case for government, please welcome Government Whip. Here.
Hello, let me fix some stuff on my end. I'll start in a few seconds. Okay, hi, I'm Andrea. I'll be the government whip for this round. Pronouns are he and him. You eyes through voice. If I don't take you immediately, I'll take you at the 5 to 6 minute mark. Please don't heckle or badger my speech. Now, I'd like to give a trigger warning. I'll be discussing some extremely graphic details possibly in my speech. So if this disturbs you, heads up to prepare yourself. Okay. Starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Go. Panels, this is something that government and opposition does not understand on their case. Let me give you a picture on what this debate actually looks like. Out of 60,000, every 60,000 people diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, only about 8 will survive. For the remaining 59,992 individuals, they will die. They will die painful deaths. Let me explain to you what their deaths look like. For most of these individuals, they only have a few months to live. They want to spend it with their families, all happy, right? No, these people are going to fight for their lives. They're going to go to alternatives like chemotherapy and radiation poisoning. And what does it actually look like? Chemotherapy is literally poisoning your body with radiation. You see these individuals suffer radiation burns where their skin is burnt and peels off. You see these people suffer chronic illness. You see these people become lethargic, constant diarrhea, internal bleeding. Individuals with sluggish minds who aren't able to communicate with their families anymore, their children. This looks like mothers who have to go through hell just trying to survive. This looks like mothers screaming in pain every single night, and their children having to hear that their screams of pain and knowing that they aren't able to do anything about it. All the while on opposition bench, they say that the government wants to supposedly protect these individuals by keeping them from the very single treatments that are their only hope on their end. They're keeping these individuals with the knowledge that there are experimental treatments out there that might potentially help these individuals who are suffering through this immense pain. Yet they tell them to protect these individuals. We're not going to give them that. We tell you that's much worse than false hope, because you're dangling these individuals with the prospect, the information that there are existing experimental treatments out there, but you're not giving it to them. Ultimately, we tell you that this robs these individuals of their agency, their empowerment, disenfranchises them, and ultimately robs them of their right to life. So what do we get from opposition bench in this case, and why does it not stand? So we see two main things here. Number one is that there's like information asymmetry. It's not fair to individuals, and like they might get hurt more. And that number two, that there's morally gray areas, and that like the government might somehow end with less authority. Now, these two cases are already dead in the water by the end of this debate, and I'll explain to you why. So before I move on, like to the main like comparatives of my speech, like a few characters or a few framework on what my speech will be. So number one, I'll be rebutting the remaining cases of like opposition bench. Number two, I'll be providing comparatives on either end, and number three, I'll be giving you a best case, worst case analysis on the impacts here. So ultimately, let's first discuss on their main point on their case, where they try to say, oh, what about these individuals that are going to suffer through more pain on their end? So we've already been able to rebut this on more than 3 levels. So on the very first level, we tell you that these individuals, these corporations on the very first level have an incentive to ensure that these medicines or these exclusionary or these experimental treatments work as well as possible. So what does this look like? So this looks like decades of experimentation on, for example, computer research first, and then continuing to test on animals, ultimately leading up to human like testing. So this looks like it most likely these experimental treatments will work. So what are examples of experimental treatments in the real world? This looks like stem cell treatment, experimental drugs to combat HIV and AIDS, and less invasive surgeries to implement like a medicine for people with autoimmune diseases. So ultimately, we've seen in like status quo, most of these experimental treatments that have been implemented in status quo have tended to work. So this is example already substantiating our case, which we provide a substantiative analysis for. On the other hand, from opposition, you don't really get anything from them. You see assertions, oh, these people are going to suffer through more pain. Let me tell you, there's no chance that these individuals are going to suffer through more pain and constantly having to irradiate your own body with poison until you eventually collapses apart and having to have your family hear your screams in the middle of the night. We tell you there's nothing that gets worse than that. Not to mention the fact that these individuals, these experimental treatments in the very first place are intended to be better. They're intended to be less invasive. They're intended to be less painful. They're intended to be more effective in addressing symptoms and not attacking the main cause of these symptoms. So it's very and highly unlikely that these things will actually be more worse or cause more pain for these individuals. And ultimately, when you talk about like protecting these individuals, that's coming from opposition, and we tell you that there is no concept for danger for these individuals anyway. If you are an individual with a 100% terminal rate, suffering through immense pain, and are about to die in a few months, we tell you that there are no risks that there are no risks that you won't be willing to take, because we tell you when you have nothing to lose, you have everything to gain, and that is the stance on our end. So ultimately, we see two main stances on this debate. So number one, the clashes are where are we better able to protect these individuals, and number two, where are we better able to ensure like the agency of these individuals. We believe these individuals, the terminally ill and the desperate, are the main actors of this debate and should be prioritized in any case. So let's discuss on the points, for example, on being able to protect individuals all around the world when it comes to like corporations being evil and whatnot. So something that like opposition starkly fails to address on there, and it's an analysis of why corporations have it in their best interest to make sure that their treatment is ethical and that it works properly. Because on the very first level, most likely this implementation of like human testing on of like experimental testing actually looks like the path to getting FDA approval. In order to get FDA approval in the first place, these corporations most likely have to test it on humans first to prove that it's safe. So ultimately, this number one, this saves millions of lives in the long run if these individuals do prove that this testing works. And number two, it also provides incentives for corporations to make sure that their testing is as ethical as possible. So what about the analysis on their end, coming from their end, that oh, these corporations will like sugarcoat individuals? Now it's clear in status quo that like information asymmetry isn't something that exists. We tell you for experimental treatments, it's also in corporations in best interest to make it as clear as possible what the side effects are going to be. Otherwise, there are going to be huge illegal implications. Not to mention the fact that ultimately they don't need to attract individuals anyway. Most likely these people, these terminally ill people, will actually want to opt into this treatment. A lot of individuals. So it's actually best, there's no reason for these companies to sugarcoat what they're going through. More like it's more important for them to set the expectations for these individuals so they aren't disappointed and so that there are no legal implications. So that case is dead in the water coming from opposition. So lastly, when they talk about like how there's less authority on the government, we tell you, number one, there's still authority for the FDA because really they can't, these corporations still can't give like their medicine to everyone if it's not FDA approved. But before I move on, any POIs? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We tell you that these corporations can't like distribute their medicine anyway without FDA approval. So the authority still rests with the government, and that case is also dead in the water. So there, and lastly, regarding information asymmetry, we tell you the information, even considering like even if you like concede the fact that information asymmetry does exist, we tell you that it's far worse on their end when they rob these individuals of the option to actually opt in into these experimental treatments rather than information asymmetry, because then you are condemning them to death. So ultimately, we tell you that we are better able to like empower these individuals on our end and better able to protect them because we're better able to give them choices and actually give them a chance to live. So ultimately, what have we been able to prove to you coming from government? Number one, that these treatments are most likely to be safe because of all the incentives of the actors. Number two, we tell you that at least gives these individuals a right to live. And number three, that the harms are far worse on opposition when it comes to giving false hope, government authority, as well as protecting the individual. So their case on government intervention also does not stand. So ultimately, opposition has had this nail in their coffin. Their case is dead. And ultimately, government's case has still untouched and still stands because they've generally been unengaging. So for all of these reasons, government must win this debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, government whip. Now to crystallize the case for opposition, please welcome opposition whip. Here, here.
Okay, give me a bit to set up my timer. Thank you. Okay. Hold on. Let me set up. No, I need to get out my notes. Okay. I take POIs verbally, just don't put them in the chat because I won't be looking. I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. We think the only destiny that these terminally ill patients get to choose in Proposition's paradigm is one that's death for themselves and demise for the people around them. They cannot tell us that that's okay because they're going to die anyways, because it washes down every single one of their claim on how they want them to live. We think these are two very contradicting claims. They cannot take the debate. We're also unsure as to why chemotherapy, one that is FDA approved, whom they would graphically explain to us to be very tormenting, is somehow worse than random treatments that isn't proven to be clinically efficient by the FDA because of reasons that they probably is way more unsafe than chemotherapy in and of itself. We think what happens realistically then in their paradigm is that the treatments in their world bring way more suffrage for these patients. In the end of the day, we think they cannot take today's debate for the plain assumption that these things are going to be safe because they were tested on animals, which we have proven to you all throughout the bench that they're already biologically different from humans. They cannot just assume they'll be safe. But I have like two just extraneous responses that I would just quickly touch upon before moving on to the clashes. They firstly told us, as a response towards our like characterization, that terminal ill patients still get face-to-face briefing. We think there's still information asymmetry in either side, in their side of the
Point
house
of
as well.
information.
No, they still have information asymmetry on their side of the house as well, because the
Order.
very reason that you're because of the very reason that these people do not know enough information on the medical industry. But they also told us that doctors have the best interest at heart because we say because of the very reason that doctors are not the people that are doing these testing, is the scientists in the FDA headquarters in and of itself. We don't think any of this stands. But I'll just go into the real engagement in my classes later on, which I'll be focusing on, first of all, where do people get a better chance of living and where do we better empower people, which is the very main metrics that they provided to us in their first speaker. And I'll prove why we win on their very metric as well. On proposition, the main thing that came out throughout their case was that because we need to provide them the right to try, therefore they have a normal life in the end. Basically, all in all, the right to try equates right to normal lives. On the meta, right, we never get any analysis as to why they will live as a result of just receiving these treatments that we already told you since birth are not safe at all. But on the thesis then, to engage on whether or not is it true. We think it's untrue because they first needed to tell to us why was animal testing to be the one that's confirmed to be safe. We told you that animals are gravely biologically different than humans. And animal testing in and of itself in the status quo isn't even used to test the efficacy of the treating the disease that they want. Is to ensure that the animal doesn't die or have their organs failing when being injected with this chemical. Is not to try whether or not the disease will be cured in and of itself, which is what Proposition gravely misunderstood. What they did in response to this case is that they told us that they're going to die anyway, so they don't care. We think this undermines their whole case, right? Because we don't understand why they're not okay with people dying in their best case scenario, but then okay with them dying in their worst. We think it's gravely inconsistent.
Point of
then.
information.
Another thing they told us that if we take away the right to try, we take away the right to choice. But we think in Anggun's speech, we also gave you reasons why government intervention on individual agency, when they bring a high likelihood of negative repercussions, is justified, like seatbelts and lockdowns. We think all of those things are parallels in the status quo as to why it's justified, as to why it's so. We think in the end of the day, it still cannot stand. But on the impacts, right, take them at their best case. Even if you do have some sort of right to normal lives, and even we assume that they get to go back to their families and they still be happy. We think even if it's true that all their impacts stand, that this patient with terminally ill cancer will still be able to live their life. We think the negative repercussions still stand, and it outweighs every single impact they want to bring forth. I have two things that I want to bring up in this later. First of all, we told you that they give corporations the autonomy to give future interventions on the safety of the people. Caroline told you that the narrative catalyzes these corporations to do unethical testing on other humans in the process of the testing of the medication because of how their profit incentivized.
Point of
And how
information.
they will exploit this narrative on the right to try, and because of how the narrative paints a facade to the people that these medications are safe just because it was tested on some rabbit in a lab. We think proposition normalizes this narrative, and we think it's therefore ethically unjust. The implication of this then is that even if it's true, the implications of this then is that even if it's true they do get some right to normal life, we still think it gravely harms the safety of the other people on the ground because you don't provide any right to normal life to the other members or communities in society then. This also means on a utilitarian scale, even if you do help this one woman who's fighting stage 4 pancreatic cancer,
Point
you
of
still
information. Please
disenfranchise, I'll
engage.
take it later, you still disenfranchise those who are the other communities who are going to be unethically used, which on a scale which means more people will be harmed in their paradigm, then we take the debate. But also we think because it leads to a slippery slope that removes the power of the medical professionals, then we think Anggun told you why it's important for these people to stay centralized in power, because the narrative assumes that the FDA's clinical treatment is something that isn't important in the medical industry, and that the narrative assumes that any chemical mixed up in labs that can diminish like a single strain of disease means that cancer can be cured. We think you completely take away the autonomy and power of the FDA in and of itself. We think because of the reason that these medical professionals are what's needed to ensure in the prerequisite to get further research and production of medication, which is the moment in which proposition takes their power away and the people's right to life, the same in their side of the house. I'll take the POI.
You keep on telling us about how there's going to be unethical like testing on humans, but you've never even been able to characterize to us what this looks like. And don't you think it's much more likely to happen on your end if like individuals can subscribe to corporations like testing out of their free will?
No, because you give them the right to try. We already told you since our first speaker that we don't give them this autonomy because they will have the possibility of harming themselves. It was something that Caroline exclusively flagged out. But because of the reason that I already characterized you just literally seconds ago, why? Because you give them the narrative that these things are right. These corporations that want to like gather data points to want to test their medications, they're more likely to get people to do their unethical testings because they're profit incentivized, because of the reason that they want to like further research and put their medication out there. It's the very reason why you're gonna have this in their side of the house. You just completely ignore Anggun's point. But on the second clash then of which side empowers people, I'll go into two different stakeholders. First of all, the individuals on the ground, second of all, medical professionals. First of all, individuals on the ground. They told us that they give them the right to choice and therefore they practice autonomy, therefore it empowers them. First of all, we're unsure to the truth of this claim because we already told you in the prerequisite that state takes away the autonomy of the people every day, like seatbelts. But also, secondly, unsure as to why this is the only avenue to empower people. Proposition assumes that the only way for those with pancreatic cancer to feel happy is with the speculative treatment. We don't know the truth of this claim. But we see that someone with terminally ill cancer, for example, can have the empowerment from being around their family and friends or being around people that love them. This exists symmetrically on either side of the house. This cannot be their winning clash. But why we outweigh them on this metric of empowerment, even if marginal, we think because the moment in which you make them rely on the treatment that isn't even confirmed to be true, you can modify their existence to be something that isn't confirmed by the FDA, is when you make them be seen as the dead weights of society and gravely different from the typicals of the world. We think in that moment, you gravely take away the empowerment. But secondly, then on medical professionals, which is our unique stakeholder, proposition had no analysis on this front. And because of the reason that we think medical professionals being seen as powered is what comes analytically prior to ensure the existence of medical industry, to have the further innovation of medication in the future, because they didn't engage or have any positive case, they lose on the long-term way. But because Anggun gave you points on how you have likely incentives for these professionals to do further medical research to develop drugs, then we think because of their whole case was assertive, we take the debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Opposition Whip. Awesome speech. Now to tell us why they have won this debate, please welcome Opposition Reply. Here.
Can I check if I'm audible?
Loud and clear.
Okay. There's someone cutting grass outside of my house, so I'm worried if there's gonna be disturbances. Okay, but I'll proceed with my speech. I'll be starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. The people we Team Opposition want to protect in today's debate are the people opting into these treatments. A few things before I proceed. Firstly, government is basing their entire case on a gamble. They cannot ensure the success of the treatments they're providing these people. We tell you, these success rates are likely to be extremely low because they have not even been passed by the FDA, which even enables human testing in the first place. This is a premise government is willing to debate upon. And secondly, we tell you, treatments for these individuals are, for example, individuals that are fighting for stage 4 cancer are likely to give these individuals more harm and suffering. For A, we've already told you the success rates are all-time low. B, this gives them false hope. Government is painting a world of unicorns and rainbows for these individuals and then letting their world come crashing down when these things ultimately do not work. A few reasons why we want today's debate. Firstly, we better protect these individuals and their autonomy. What? A, about legal autonomy. We've already told you that companies do not prioritize curing these humans. They prioritize getting money, winning the race to being the first, creating like certain cures. We tell you these companies simply do not have an incentive in ensuring these individuals themselves are protected throughout the testing. The justification being, first, they already have legal ammunition against anything going wrong. And secondly, these people are dying anyways. When treatments do not work, we tell you, or result in further damage, when things go wrong and potentially create further problems that propagate throughout society, these companies are incentivized to cover it up and disregard them. The only response we've gotten from government about this is that companies will still want to disclose this information because now individuals do not have false hope, which we Team Opposition, we don't believe this to be true because this doesn't even solve this problem as they want individuals to be tested. So yeah. On the second point on why, on this premise, we win because we are giving these, we are protecting these people from all of these problems which Gov hasn't properly rebutted. Second point on why we win, we tell you we should stick to opposition's world because team government's world leads to a slippery slope that removes the power and authority from the FDA and professionals. We tell you when these procedures are not passed by the FDA in the first place, we don't know how the government can justify FDA. Like, we don't know how proposition can justify FDA and the government being able to ensure the safety of these repercussions, of these treatments and repercussions. We tell you it is justified for the government to choose what's best for humans, regardless of their life expectancy, their money capabilities, and how desperate they are. Next, we tell you it's less likely for to incentivize of these professionals to do further med research or to develop drugs because of their whole role as an actor is diminished in proposition. Let's just give the most basic formula that touches the surface level of diseases, which is no further testing. In the future, it is going to be more normalized for people to ignore FDA approvals because they claim that they have unique case, and that's very dangerous. If one person does it because they claim they have a unique case, everyone starts to do it. And that is the slippery slope that's going to happen that government has not proven. So overall, we've proven to you how we can better protect these people. And even though, and how under team government side, they are not actually solving these people's pains and suffering. And lastly, they're perpetuating this controversial issue that they have not solved at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Opposition reply. Now to tell us why they have won for the government, please welcome Go Reply. Here.
Hello, my name is Andrea again. Pronouns are she and her, and no POIs. Hold on. Okay, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1, go. Opposition ultimately loses this debate because they have been dismissive, unengaging, and they have been pushing assertions all throughout this debate. And I think a telltale sign of when someone loses this debate is when they change their stated prominent actors at the second speaker, right? That's exactly what happened in the opposition because the LO talked about the most vulnerable actors, which are the terminally ill patients, but then the DLO started talking about the general public. So panel, don't be swayed by their wishy-washy framing, right? What we should focus on are the terminally ill patients because they are the most vulnerable actors of this debate. They also, so let's look at the 5 things in this debate that prove we already win. First, we prove that existing alternatives don't work, like chemotherapy, other options that are FDA approved because they are time consuming. People aren't always saved. There's no guarantee that they will work as well, right? Second, experimental treatments are more likely to be safe because of the incentives of all actors, because governments, people who make these treatments have the incentive to do better because they know that it will save lives. Third, even if info asymmetry exists, like the opposition talks about, the lack of agency is worse on their end because you're robbing people of their right to try. Fourth, unethical testing is more likely to occur on their end because governments force people into these testing as opposed to giving them the free choice to do so. And lastly, how government authority is still maintained on our end, thus magnifying all of the government's benefits and negating all of opposition's harms. But I'll be further weighing this debate on three metrics. First, on contributions, second, engagement, and third, goal, burden, standard fulfillment. The biggest problem of this debate is that there is a ticking clock placed on the lives of the terminally ill patients, right? And we offered our solution, which is to give them a choice to live through experimental treatments that are backed up by research and are already on the way of FDA approval. And we give them a solution right now. For example, stem cell therapy has saved lives, right? And opposition, their solution is to wait for FDA approval or to use treatments that have already been approved, which first is not always guaranteed to work. And for those that they are waiting to be approved by the FDA, it takes decades to happen while the clock continues to tick and the pain and the suffering of these patients get worse on their end. But something also important to know is that FDA approval doesn't always guarantee that people will live, right? It doesn't save lives like the op tries to make you believe. And we already told you that they failed to recognize throughout the entire debate that people are already dying. So these treatments don't work. The approval, you see that we save more lives because we lessen their sufferings. We lessen the time that they have to wait. Because when you have nothing to lose, you have everything to gain. So we win on our positive contributions. Now on engagement, even if they tried to poke holes at our proposal, we were able to address all of their concerns. When they said it was unsafe, we told you time and time again that these trials have been researched. This looks like animal testing backed up by science and funded by scientists. And when they said it's unethical, it's more unethical on their side because there is no consent needed. And they talked about information asymmetry, which is unimportant because what is worse is taking the agency of people to live. And they talked about how corporations will be like, governments will have less authority, but corporations rely on the government. And they want, corporations want to make things as clear as possible. They want to be transparent because a lot of people want treatments and they want to avoid legal implications as well. And just like that, opposition's case is already dead in the water. And from my reply speech alone, you can see that the opposition had positive contributions but lacked any negative contributions. They didn't touch our case at all. And that is why their case is just as dead as the terminally ill patients on their side of the house. And you see that we clearly achieved our goal to empower, protect, and enfranchise these terminally ill and desperate patients because we did that by giving them the guidance, the choice, and the access to these clinical trials when they already suffering and at the end of their lives. In summary, we have made more relevant points. We engaged. We successfully fulfilled our goal. We save more lives. So vote government and give us that trophy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, government reply. Now I request everyone to please cross the house, virtually cross the house. And after this round, there will be no oral adjudication. So we request everyone to please leave the breakout room.